Hydaelyn, Eorzea, the Black Shroud, Gridania. Hidden in the eastern reaches of Aldenard, Gridania stands as a testament to the bravery and will of the Gridanian people. This peaceful and nature-loving city-state would find itself in the center of attention as the curtain fell on the 6th astral era and Dalamud descended above the Twelveswood. Gridania's history can be traced all the way back to the year 660 of the 6th astral era. The second migration wave of Hyur have driven the Ellison to the Twelveswood, where they plan to construct their new home. However, the Twelveswood was guarded by elementals, who viewed the Ellison as nothing but intruders and almost immediately started attacking them in an attempt to drive them out of their woods or kill them if necessary. This came as a huge surprise to the Ellison, who knew nothing about the elementals. They didn't understand what was attacking them or why, and was powerless to retaliate. After a while, the Ellison finally realized that whatever was attacking them was not going to stop, and they had no means to defend themselves, so they fled underground, where they would start construction on a new settlement. 50 years later, in the year 710, the Hyur population of Eorzea had increased so dramatically they started inhabiting the Twelveswood as well. The Hyur too get attacked by the elementals and require cover. They discover the underground settlement the Ellison had constructed, and a war broke out. A war that would last for 30 years. In 740 of the 6th astral era, the Ellison and Hyur finally realized that they shared a common goal: to avoid the wrath of the elementals. They decided to put aside their differences, forming a pact betwixt Hyur and Ellison, that they may prosper together beneath the Twelveswood. Together, the two races constructed Gelmora, a massive subterranean city, safe from the elementals. The city-state would prosper and grow for centuries. It all changed in the year 1076, when a Hurrian conjurer by the name of Jorin Lightheart finally managed to commune with the elementals, and talks were held in Peace Garden. In the end, the elementals permit the Gelmorans to settle in the Black Shroud. And in 1077, construction finally began on the forest city-state of Gridania. A hamlet was constructed the same year, where materials needed for the construction would be harvested and crafted. This hamlet would be known as Quarry Mill. And that's how Gridania was born, the city-state's flag representing the story leading up to the city-state's birth, the golden color representing the lands of the Twelveswood filled with the elemental's power. The white lily on top signifying mankind's first congress with the elementals in Peace Garden, and the entwined serpents originating from Gelmora proclaiming the goodwill and unity of Ellison and Hyur in constructing Gridania. In 1.0, Gridania was the second most popular city-state, although it was still miles behind Ul'dah. Gridania only really saw high traffic during the latter half of 1.0's life, when Louisoix was introduced to the game. This should come as no surprise to anyone, but Gridania used to be one zone in 1.0, and like Ul'dah and Limsa Lominsa, there were no further division in Gridania, it was just Gridania. For simplicity, we'll be covering what we today refer to as New Gridania in this part. Gridania could be entered through any of the two entrance bridges encompassing Jadeite Flood, Berlin's bridges to the west, and Mistal bridges to the east. These bridges acted as the zone's loading tunnels, covered in bright red fabric that was very prone to the game's intense bloom. During daytime passage, it was best not to look at the screen until you had passed through them entirely. The covering is obviously there to hide the assets popping in as they load into the zone. However, the bridge did offer some openings that allowed you to catch a glimpse of the Jadeite Flood and the forest surrounding the city-state. Like the name suggests, the Mistal and Berlin's bridges were a series of bridges, 3 in total, connecting to landmasses at certain points along the way. We'll be entering through Mistal bridges, as that is the entrance mostly used in A Realm Reborn and was also the entrance mostly used in 1.0. At the end of the Mistal bridges, you finally get to the entrance of Gridania, with the iconic watchtower and water wheels turning in the background. As you'll most likely notice in this episode, this portion of Gridania mostly survived the calamity unharmed. But there's especially one point that got a real beating after the calamity. This road right here used to be a major headache for every 1.0 player in Gridania. Due to the game's lack of a jump function, maps had excessive amounts of invisible walls to prevent players from getting stuck. And no invisible wall would be more infuriating than the one near the Carline Canopy in Gridania. The road leading down from the northern part of Gridania would pass down here and connect with the road at the bottom, and the invisible wall would go all the way down. No jumping or sliding down the side, no, you'd have to walk all the way down. This became such a big grievance for players, the devs eventually moved the wall back to this lamppost, easing the pain somewhat. In A Realm Reborn, however, the path is smashed entirely. Good riddance. The Carline Canopy itself remained more or less unchanged between versions, only real difference being the lighting and slight graphical updates in A Realm Reborn. In my opinion, one of the prettiest Adventurers guilds in the game. Another change is related to a system that received an overhaul in A Realm Reborn, the Airship Landing. The actual ticket haul remained the same between versions, but in 1.0, once a ticket was purchased, you would be let past the barrier, so you could walk down and wait for the airship yourself. This would allow for a great view of the gigantic water wheel whenever the airship landing was empty. Moving out of the Carline Canopy, we make our way up towards what is today known as the Gridania Aetheryte Plaza. In 1.0, it was only known as the Knot, with a small pond where the Aetheryte crystal resides today. The pond still exists to this day, with the Aetheryte Plaza simply having been built on top of it. The Knot was and still is the home of the Chocobo stables and these vendors. Only real thing that has changed here is what they sell. Now, stepping back a bit and following the path to the northeast from the Knot, you'd have to walk what felt like an eternity before reaching the Archers Guild. And the outside of the building looks the same, and the inside is also almost entirely the same as before the calamity. The only real change being that the NPCs have mostly been swapped out with new ones. But there was always something about the outside of the Archers Guild in 1.0 that just fascinated me. It was one of my favorite areas in 1.0's Gridania, and looking back at it, I can kind of see why. It might just be because the rest of 1.0 Gridania was so dull and overgrown. This large open area just felt like a breath of fresh air. In A Realm Reborn, this was built on further with a platform for archers to shoot arrows at targets, and this large tower-looking thing. They also opened it up a bit more, for even more freshness. Moving back to the Knot, just south of it, you'd find the Oak Atrium and the Carpenter's Guild. This location has not seen a lot of changes between versions. In fact, they haven't even finished this thing. I mean, they've had 5 years to complete it, but they've made literally no progress. I think this Lalafell been pretending to work on it for all these years. Crossing the Black Tea Brook into the area you'd expect to find the Adder's Nest, you'd actually find nothing of interest except for this round building, which you couldn't even enter. It's there. Oh, and the playground, which also remains more or less the same today. The second entrance and exit of Gridania was Berlin's Bridges, accessible through White Wolf Gate. Now, this gate is locked to new adventurers in A Realm Reborn, but it will open after adventurers reach level 29 and complete a quest. At this point, you might be asking yourself why Gridania was only the second most popular city-state and arguably the worst before Louisoix was introduced. Well, here's the Aetheryte Plaza. I mean, it looks pretty, but then look at the map. and look at its position on the map. Located next to Holly Avenue, the Aetherite Plaza was placed far away from most of the city-state's amenities, only exception being the market wards, which were placed fairly close. But if you were a lancer, archer, or leatherworker, or gods forbid a conjurer, you were in for a long trek. Knowing what we know today, the original idea was to place Aetherites inside the Adventurers Guild as depicted in the opening cinematic, but they quickly realized that this would lead to massive congestion. Their solution seems to have been to place the Aetherites as far away from the zone's hotspots as possible, the market wards for some reason not being part of the equation. While this almost worked in Ul'dah, it was a near-death sentence for Gridania, which was already getting complaints about its cramped tunnel-like streets, dim lighting, poor optimization, and bland textures. The criticism got quelled somewhat with the introduction of the Ethernet system in 1.21, which made the city-state more accessible, but it didn't excuse the poor layout and design of the city-state. Gridania had a difficult birth and an even more difficult existence in 1.x. However, the adventurers who called Gridania home soon came to love their city-state, despite her horrendous layout and color palette. The 1.0 theme of Gridania might have helped as well. It was called Born of the Boughs, and sounded like this. And with that, we've reached the end of this first part of 1.0 Gridania's history. Thank you for watching. Now remember to subscribe so you can get notified when the second part is up. If you enjoyed this little look at Gridania, please leave a like and drop me a comment down below if you've got anything to add to this, have a story to share, or just want to share a reaction to what we've explored today. I'll be back in the next episode of Remnants of a Realm. Until then, Eorzeans, may you ever walk in the light of the crystal.